is transition, and welcome, Mika.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to share my screen here really quickly. There's so many screen sharing options. Zoom got fancy on me. All right. Okay. Jenny, are we good on the screen share?
We sure are.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all for your patience on that. You would think after 7 months of living this new life, I would be a Zoom master, but always learning and improving. So I am here today to talk to you about pre-ETS and transition services for students who are blind or visually impaired. And I'm really happy to be here. I appreciate the invite from the joint conference. And I hope that though this information is Indiana specific, anyone who is here, whether you're a teacher, an aspiring teacher, or a professional working with adults, that there's something in here that can be useful to you. And if there's not, please let me know that. I really do value and welcome feedback. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say on the surveys and in the chat with this conversation. So as Jenny mentioned, please do put your stuff in the chat. If you have a question and your typing is not your forte, feel free to unmute yourself at the end and share that. We'll have some time for questions. Another item is just as a fair warning to all of you, I am a real life blind person, so these perspectives are my own, but they're also evidence-based and sort of based on my career of having worked with other blind students. I realize that I am not the epitome of every blind student, but I'm hoping that my authentic lived experience does add to this presentation. And finally, there are a couple of activities in here. Normally, if I was going to present in person, I would do this in a slightly different way so that hopefully you all are engaged and able to participate and ask questions. So I'm going to try a couple things with Zoom. And again, please do let me know, your thoughts on that and how that goes for the future. So I do love this format. I'm not standing between you and lunch. You can be eating lunch while you're hearing me, and that's wonderful. But I hear that I'm standing between you and prizes. So we'll move forward. The title of the presentation is called The Mountain That Isn't, and it's about empowering blind students to get out of high school and live in the world and be competent folks. For the blind and visually impaired folks in attendance, the background is black, and there's some sort of different color waves on the background, and that's the theme for the entire presentation. Anyone who's using a screen reader, all of the images should have alt text on them, but please feel free to call me out if they don't. Here we go. So we're going to start with a story. I have always wanted to go to Alaska. I don't know where that desire came from in my life, but it's there. And so I figure if I'm going to go somewhere, I should do some research and learn about things. And what I found out about Alaska is lots of things, but an interesting story that I think really applies here is the story of Maynard Mountain. This is Maynard Mountain. It's a picture. It's covered in snow, and it's probably much colder there than it is here. So for those of you who like beaches, this may not be joyous for you, but this is Maynard Mountain, and it stands between sort of the inside of Alaska and a port through Whittier. And back in the before the 1940s, getting across this mountain to sell your goods, if you're a tradesperson, or to get goods to the port, was really difficult. People used sled dogs and they used all kinds of things, but it took a long time and it was super dangerous to get there. And so there was this issue, especially in the war, of how we are going to get needed supplies and provisions to the port, and thus how are we going to tackle this mountain. And I think that that's really appropriate for how are we going to tackle this mountain? How are we going to get students who are transition age, who are about to exit high school into the world in a successful way? And certainly we could do that by using the proverbial sled dog team and traipsing over the mountain, but that's probably not the most effective way, though it is still a way to get there. So we're going to spend the next little while trying to figure out how we are going to traverse this mountain and what tools and things we're going to do in order to make that happen. So first, we're going to do a little activity here. I want everyone to pick a number, pick one single number. In front of you is a grid. It's a 4x4 grid with 16 numbers 1 through 16. And the numbers are not in order. So when you pick your number, remember the placement that it was in. You just get to pick one number, choose wisely. Okay, and now you get a prize from your number. In this section, it's the same 4x4 grid, and in place of the numbers are different items. There's all kinds of things from the word friends to a flashlight to a map. There's waving money, there's a car, there's a rope, there's an MRE, which is a military sort of packed meal that I hear doesn't taste really great at all. There's an airplane flying over Maynard Mountain. So if you think about when you interact with a kid or you are tasked with a student, this is sort of how it starts. How am I going to cross this mountain? How am I going to get this student where they need to go? Well, what tools do I have? Well, some students have unlimited money. Some students, and these aren't literal, right? These are just, some students it's really easy for, and some students it's really difficult for. So it may be really easy for somebody who has a ton of money or who has an airplane that can fly them over that mountain. You're going to come across students that are like, hey, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to be a teacher and I have all the skills and the parent support and everything that I need to get there. And cool, awesome. You just need to help them make sure they pass algebra and their IEP is what it should be. And then you're going to run across other students who they come to you and they have a jar of pickles. One of the pictures is a jar of pickles. I hope none of you got that, but you might have. And I'm sure that if you've been in the field for any amount of time, you can probably sort of put some loose names to some of these. Who is your student that has the airplane, and who is your student that has a ton of friends, and who's your student that has one of the squares is plain white. So some students are going to come to you and it's like, okay, what have we been doing for the last 14, 15, 16 years? And I'm just speaking very frankly. I'm not, certainly there's no judgment on the school or the parent or the student, but that's just reality. Sometimes you get a student or you work with a person, and this applies to adults too, and you think, okay, what are we, I don't have a whole lot to work with here. And it's really unlikely that I'm going to be able to get over this mountain. So what do you do with that? My hope is that you will reach out and find some transition services and some programs and some things that will help that student gain more tools, gain more resources in order for them to be able to cross that mountain in whatever way works for them. Because again, everybody's not going to cross the mountain in the same way. Certainly there's probably one easy way, right? Or the easier way, but that doesn't mean that using those sled dogs like people did in the 1930s isn't a possibility. We're just trying to figure out how we're going to make it happen. And there's just so many combinations of students and skills and ways that we can tackle the problem. And it's not the same for everybody. So here are some tools, some major tools that we're going to talk about today. And these are the transition programs that are available to students here in Indiana. Certainly if you are in a different state or you are in a local area, there may be some additional things or there may be slight variations on these, but these are kind of very general things that are basic tools, in my experience, that blind and low vision students need in order to really be successful and have the most smooth transition that they can. Okay, so first we're going to go over Pre-ETS. Pre-ETS, that's Pre-Employment Transition Services. There's going to be a lot of acronyms here. I'm sure that that's very surprising to all of you because there's no other acronyms in any other part of your job, I'm sure. But this is called Pre-ETS, and it is probably this is the flagship program that we have at Bosma Enterprises, at least. And certainly it's the newest program, but I think it's probably the most impactful. And what this is back in 2014, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act was passed, and it did several things. A couple of those things were unfortunate for blind people, but this was one thing that was a good thing. And what it said was that vocational rehabilitation services, which we'll get to in a little bit, needed to spend a portion of its budget on students who are transition aids. And transition aids is 14 to 22. And you can, it sort of falls in different contexts and for different students, and I'll explain that later. But this is for students ages 14 to 22. So generally you would think of that being somebody in high school, but it can also be somebody in college. Once you get to that 18 to 22 range, we all know that we have a range of folks with differing abilities and different plans and paths in life. And so I have some 18-year-olds that have been in college. I have one that's been in college for a couple of years, and then I have another 18-year-old that's going to plan to spend 4 more years in high school. And that's okay. This program can serve any and all of those students. So it's funded and mandated through WIOA, which is great. And that means that this program does come free of charge to anybody who uses it. And the folks that are eligible are any students with disabilities ages 14 to 22 in school. And I know I keep repeating that, but it's a really important part of this program, because that's the population that it serves. So the student needs to have an IEP or a 504, or if anybody works with students who are homeschooled, or who have other unique situations, we can also accept medical documentation of blindness. We have worked with a student who somehow made his way through school without any sort of IEP. He was for sure a visually impaired student, and we used his medical documentation to be able to admit him into the program, and that worked out just fine. But we do prefer the IEP or the 504. And so what we do in this program, it varies. I always struggle to discuss this because I've been doing the job for a few years, and I still can't say exactly what we do for every single person because it's never the same twice. And that's one of the things that I love about this, is that these 5 required areas that you see here are the things that we need to work on. But as I'm sure you can imagine, we can do all kinds of different things in those areas. So I'm going to go through each of those and kind of explain a little bit about what are the common things that I do, but also know that if you have a student that needs to work on career exploration, and I don't mention whatever activity you think is helpful, that doesn't mean that activity can't happen. It's just, again, it's individualized for everybody. So we work on, like I said, career exploration. This is a big one, and it comes first for a reason. This is the, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up question. And I work with a lot of students, and they roll their eyes at me every time I ask, because people have been talking to them about that, hopefully, since they were little. But this is kind of where it starts, is finding what lights your fire, what makes you happy, what are you good at, what do you want to spend the rest of your life doing, or what do you want to learn more about, right? Because I still don't know what I want to spend the rest of my life doing, so I certainly can't expect a 16-year-old to know that for sure. But I'm hoping that by that point they have had opportunities to explore what they like and what they don't like, to figure out what career that might lead them to. And if they haven't had that opportunity, because I've run into that situation too, where they just are, they don't know, they have no reference for what they might be able to do, and what skills they might have, and what they even like. When I asked a student once, okay, well, you don't know what you want to do, that's fine. Do you think you want to work inside or outside? And it was like, they couldn't even answer the question, because, and I'll tell you why, it's because nobody had ever really let them outside to do work. They had never had to rake leaves, or clean the car out, or I don't know, trim a tree, or whatever people do outside. I prefer to work inside in the air conditioning. But they had never had those opportunities to know, hey, I don't like this. This isn't what I want. Or, hey, this is really cool. I like being dirty. I want to be outside in the sun all day. So we go all the way from those kinds of questions to what do you like? What do you not like? All the way to, okay, you want to be a teacher. Let's talk about what kind of teacher you want to be. Let's do some research on the labor market, whether you're going to be able to get a job. Let's do some research on retention. how many people keep their job and how long do they do that for teachers? And so it sort of runs the gamut in the career exploration path. We like to give them the opportunity to interview somebody who has that job. And I even like to take it a step further and have them interview a blind or visually impaired person who has that job, because that is really where they're going to see whether that career is what they want to do. And they're also going to understand how a blind person can be successful in that career. So that's career exploration. Work-based learning, I'm going to touch on it briefly here, but you'll hear more about it later on in the presentation. This is giving them the opportunity to do actual work, hands-on work. This can be paid or unpaid job experiences, internship, externships, volunteer work, even helping them learn how to do chores around the house. This is something that a lot of our students, and I'm sure you guys can attest to this, they don't have those daily living skills because nobody ever made them do the work around the house. And there's a reason it's called work around the house, because it's good work experience. So it can go, again, that one runs the gamut as well. I'm going to skip workplace readiness because, well, it's because it's my favorite and I'll talk about it last. But self-advocacy is another one that's super important. And I think that, or I hope that this all resonates with you guys. I see a lot of students who have IEPs that have goals that are self-advocacy goals, asking for accommodations, encouraging the student to know their eye condition and other disabilities, to be able to notice when they need large print or whatever accommodations work for them, really putting them in charge of that. I see that as an IEP goal a lot. And that is a valid IEP goal. And this is a program that can really help with that, helping them understand how to talk about their disability, how to disclose it, and when they have to and when they should and shouldn't, and to whom they should do that for, and why and when, all of the things about being a blind person and having that be part of their daily life. And that goes all the way from their math teacher up until, hey, they need to go to the dentist, and do they need to tell them that they're blind? Yes, no, maybe. And how do they feel about that? Like, what is their preference on that? And really getting them to sort of take ownership of their disability or disabilities and how those interact with each other and how they're going to interact with the world with those disabilities, because every blind or visually impaired person isn't going to navigate the world the same. And I don't mean like with their cane. I mean, some people are really happy to talk about their blindness. Other people don't want to talk about it. Some people are very tied to how much they can see, and they really want people to know that they can see. Other people don't care about that. And so it's helping the student learn how they feel about it, because probably a lot of their experience thus far has been, how do their teachers, how do their parents, how do school staff feel about their disability? And that really kind of washes onto them, and it takes a little bit of work to help them get to another place with that. Another thing with the self-advocacy, we do work on helping them know their IEP, why they have it, why it's important, speaking up at their conference, having opinions about those kinds of things. And and when they don't want to have opinions, because some students, they want to say everything all the time and say, this has to do with my disability and my disability and my disability. And sometimes being a stronger advocate for yourself is knowing when your disability is the thing that matters and when it's actually not. And let's talk about something else, because, hey, your disability doesn't make you the whole person. So that's self-advocacy. Counseling on opportunities for post-secondary education. This is as it sounds, and more. So students who want to go to college, we can come alongside them and work with them and help them figure out the FAFSA. If maybe if they're the first person in their family who's ever gone, we can explore different colleges. I like to take students on college visits so that they can see the campus and understand whether they want to live on an urban campus or a traditional college campus. Do they want to live on in the dorm? Do they want to live in an apartment? Do they have those kinds of skills? Everything related to getting them excited about, ready for, and logistically prepared for going to college. And then also students who aren't going to go to college, right? Just because you're not going to go to college doesn't mean that there's not something next for you after you leave. There are some great training programs. They run all the way from 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 months, even a year, depending on the kind of career that students want to get into. And we can look at that. If you want to be a janitor, Goodwill has a great 6-month training program for that. If you want to work at Amazon or UPS or any kind of warehousing, Voltech has a great 2-week training program for that. If you want to do some other things, Erskine Green is great. There's just a whole ton of different things. Even students who want to do construction, there's an apprenticeship program for that. And we talk about apprenticeships and the purpose of that and how you're gaining good knowledge without having to go to college and put your face in a book, because all of our students, as we know, books aren't their friend, and that's okay. So we look at what can be good for them. And then finally, I'll go back to workplace readiness. And I save this for last because it's sort of the catch-all. When you think about workplace readiness, you think about resumes and cover letters and mock interviews. And yes, all that happens, but also how are students going to get to work? Do they know what a city bus is? Do they know what paratransit is? Have they ever ridden in a Lyft or a taxi? Do they know how to fairly negotiate rides with their family, right? Because you can't always just assume that mom's going to take you everywhere. But if mom has agreed to take you somewhere, what's a good mutually agreeable situation? Can you pay for mom's gas? Can you, I don't know, agree to do the dishes at the house or whatever it is, but helping them understand that there's a fair exchange there and how they're going to get to work. So getting to work, even doing budgeting, setting up a bank account, helping them understand the importance of voting, certainly not who to vote for, but voting in general and their responsibilities as a citizen, because if you're going to be employed, which is the goal of all of this, then you're going to want to be a whole person also, so that you can have conversations at the water cooler and not be ostracized in your employment situation. So all of it has to do with employment, and it all really works together. So that's the nuts and bolts of the program. In terms of how do you get this for your students, because I hope that I've enticed you and that you want this for your students. The way that Bosma Enterprises does this, again, this is available throughout the state, but the way that we do this is we can serve, and this is all outside of Corona world, okay? So let's go with that. But we can serve students in person in Marion County and the Donut County. So any county that surrounds Marion or touches Marion, we can serve that student in person. Any student who falls outside of that, we're still happy to serve, and we can do that in some different ways. We can do that all virtually. That is one benefit of this pandemic, is that we've been able to make our virtual services much more robust. And then we could also, if virtual services aren't ideal for your student and you're outside of our direct service area, we can partner you or connect you with the Pre-ETS provider in your area. There's some really great providers in lots of different parts of the state. I don't know of any others that specialize in blind and low vision, but I do know that these other providers work with students with disabilities all the time, and we can work with them sort of on a team and sort of co-help your student get where they need to go. If they need some in-person connection, but that person, that provider needs some vision specific things, we can work with that. So again, it's very individual. And if you're interested in services for your student or students and you're not in the direct service county, or if you are, please feel free to contact me and my information will be at the end here. So that's how you get the services. Generally, what happens is we meet with students anywhere from once a week to once a month at school. Again, in normal circumstances, we can do that virtually as well. We meet with them at school. We can also meet with them and with you, or excuse me, not with you, with their parents at home or in the community. So I've had a student that she had a really heavy academic load, but she didn't have a clue what she was going to do after she left. She was so focused on getting her academics done. And she and I met at 3:30 at the Starbucks. And that worked for her. It was great. We were able to do Uber and Lyft and all kinds of things. And she was able to be out in the community independently, but also in a safe place where she knew that if she had a question about how to navigate the community, she had somebody that could help her with that. So again, it's very flexible, and it just depends on the student's needs and their age. As they get a little bit older, into their graduating year of high school, whatever age that comes for them, we meet with them more frequently. So that is pre-employment transition services. I'm going to give you a second to digest that, and I'm going to indulge my coffee habit here. Okay, so the next thing that I think is really important, that was tool number 1 for your students. That's a big tool that's super helpful. So keep that in your back pocket. And the next thing is the Student Training and Employment Program, the STEP program, another acronym for you. And this is a work-based learning program. It is To my knowledge, and I would love to expand my knowledge, so if you know something different, please tell me. To my knowledge, this is the premier internship program for students who are blind or visually impaired in the state of Indiana. Um, and it's a partnership, it's a wonderful partnership between Bosma Enterprises and the Indiana School for the Blind and Visually Impaired. If you've been around for a while, I'm sure that you've heard of STEP before. It is a 4-week paid summer internship work experience for students who are blind or visually impaired in the state of Indiana. And it's students ages 14 to 22. There's an asterisk there because I'll point out that students who are 21, 22, they need to have just graduated high school. This was the age was expanded for students who have multiple needs and who maybe graduated from a life skills program. They're certainly welcome in our program. We don't want college students who are trying to find a summer job. This doesn't fit for them. This is for students who are in high school or who have just left high school. I will note though, if you have a student in interesting circumstances, as we all do these days, that has graduated in December of this year or is planning to graduate in December and just take a semester off, that we can have that discussion about them coming this summer because they haven't attended college yet. So this does happen traditionally in the summer. And what we do is we bring students to Indianapolis. They stay at the School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and they go to work. We get them their first summer job. It's really difficult for blind and visually impaired students sometimes to get that job, to walk into McDonald's and say, hey, I just want to make some money. Can I flip some burgers? That doesn't always go over very well. And so in order to fix that and to help that, there's an atrocious unemployment rate nationally and statewide. It's 62% in our state for blind and visually impaired people. So we're really trying to hack away at that number with this program. And we have students who participate in this program are 36% unemployment rate as opposed to a 62%. I still don't like 36%. I would love it to be lower, but I'll take it over 62 any day. So anyway, so they come and they work and they have a job coach with them. They work at any one of 10 or 12 community partners. This is places all the way from the YMCA to a retirement home to the free spay and neuter animal place. It's called FACE, Second Helpings. So they get food service. We've had students work at Eye Surgeons of Indiana, just all kinds of different places with different kinds of jobs. And we work really hard to match students with their interests because we don't want them to just feel pigeonholed that, well, you're blind, so you can do this. We really want to try to work within their interests and help them cultivate that as well. So this program generally runs in June and or July. We don't have specific dates yet for the 2020 program, but certainly you'll all be getting more information as that comes. And if it comes, we obviously are trying to be very careful with our students and with our staff for in the COVID situation. But if we can't do this program as it normally is intended, then we'll do something different. And in the past, I'll highlight just really quickly, this past summer, we couldn't do the program. We felt that it wasn't safe. And so we moved online. We did an online career exploration program and we had 12 students that participated, and it was a wonderful experience for them. It was crazy for me, trying to make it fruitful and good for them, but also trying to do all that through technology. So we had students that wouldn't have otherwise been able to participate in STEP for one reason or another that were able to do our virtual summer program. So I can say with confidence that we will do something this next summer, and I hope that it is the general STEP program that I've just described to you or something that's really close. And before I move on from this, I want to just highlight that this program, again, is also free of charge to any participant who does it. And that's thanks to a lot of fundraising efforts through this Indiana School for the Blind and Visually Impaired does a lot of fundraising, and the Bosma Visionary Opportunities Foundation also does a lot of the fundraising. And so some of our partners that have donated in kind or with just tremendous financial support are also listed here too. Okay, so here's a sample of something that we do at the STEP program. I mentioned that it is a work program, so we get them a job, we pay them, but we also do all that workplace readiness too, all the things that you need to know to be a successful employee in life. And so this is one of my favorite activities that we do. We run it a little bit differently in person. We have the kids up and moving and engaging in things, but we'll do it here. on Zoom really quickly. And all I'm going to ask you to do is just arrange these 6 occupations from, what did I say, from lowest to highest paid. So who is the lowest paid out of here and who is the highest? Give you just a second to do that. Okay. If you have your answers. So these are the answers. The lowest paid jobs in the US right now, this was according to USA Today for 2019, are laundry workers. And then we have housekeeping folks, packagers and packers. So that's what you would think about as like maybe an Amazon, childcare workers, home health aides, and a hotel desk clerk. And I want you guys to really look at this and think about this, because these are the careers that we very often suggest for our students. And these are the students that aren't going to go to college, that maybe don't want to go to college. They might be getting a certificate of completion or whatever their situation is. These are some really common careers that we suggest for them. And I got these careers off of the 25 lowest paid jobs in the United States. So I'm not saying that we should deter anybody who wants to be a child care worker. We need child care workers. I have a 2-year-old. I cherish his caregivers. But I when I found this, it really hit me that a lot of these jobs are the ones that we encourage our blind students to try to get into. And I want us to try to move forward from that, right? Truly, if this is their interest, awesome, but help them figure out other interests as well. So if you didn't do super well on that one, here's the next one. Hopefully you'll all appreciate this. We talk about salaries, and we talk about the highest paid jobs and the lowest paid jobs. And then we also talk about the differences in cost of living between different states and why those are the same way. And so what really resonates with the students is the pay for teachers. So there's 5 states listed here, and you can list those from least paid to best paid for teacher salary. Okay. So there's the answers. Montana pays the least for its teachers, and New Jersey pays the most. So if you all want to move to New Jersey, that's totally cool. The cost of living there is a lot higher. And New Jersey doesn't actually pay the very most. Hawaii and Alaska tend to pay more, but again, it's a cost of living situation. So we talk about this with the students. We talk about the differences there. And then I usually admonish them to thank their teachers, because their teachers in Indiana don't get paid a whole terrible lot. So here's the last one. These, as you can probably imagine, are off of the 25 highest paid jobs in America. And arrange those from lowest paid to highest paid. There's your answers there. So the highest paid job in America is an anesthesiologist. And every time I see that, I laugh, because when I was in 6th grade, I took a career class, and I took a career test, and it actually said I should be an anesthesiologist. It didn't incorporate the fact that I was blind, and that may not be the best career choice for me, but that probably would have been fun and lucrative. So, there's this list, and I am certainly an advocate for blind kids pursuing whatever it is that they want to pursue. I do know of a totally blind doctor, but I recognize that that's not realistic for everybody. So I'm not telling you to tell your students like, hey, you should go be a brain surgeon, or you can be an astronaut or a pilot if you want to, because let's keep it real. Not everybody gets to be a football player, and not everybody gets to be an astronaut or a pilot, but there are some jobs on here, sales manager, attorney, that blind people really can do, and they can do effectively, and they can make good money that way. So this was just one of the activities that we do in STEP. We try to make it fun for the students. Like I said, we have them up and moving, and we have them race and break them into groups, and who can get this list right. And then they all get mad at me because none of them know what an anesthesiologist is, so they can't figure out why they would make more than a lawyer. But we talk about that, and we try to get them to engage with other aspects of going to work outside of just, you go to work and you clock in and you get a paycheck. There's a whole lot more to being a really fulfilled citizen and living a really rich life that includes work, but that has other things in it too. So we take them, just for example, we've had them to go see different unique kinds of jobs, glass blowing, the guy that drives the hot air balloon at Conner Prairie, just all kinds of unique jobs. We do have them do resumes and cover letters. They leave with a portfolio because that's important. That's the nuts and bolts. They always do a mock interview. And we appreciate Regions Bank for providing those mock interviewers and doing great sessions on financial well-being and accessibility of their products. So there's just a whole bunch of different extra things that happen in this program too. And I'll note that the recreation department at ISBVI does a wonderful job in the evening of providing great enriching activities for the students to have fun, but also to practice some of these skills as well. So it's really a very full 4 weeks. And I can't tout the program enough, right? It's really something that I see lots of different students being able to succeed in. Students that are, very the airplane students that came into your classroom with the airplane to go over the mountain. Those students that are just going to immediately go to college, they succeed in this program. And then the student that walked into your classroom and they had the plain white square and they had nothing, they succeed in this program as well. So that's the STEP program. Those are two programs that are the Pre-ETS program, serves students all the way from the age of 14. The STEP program, I made a mistake. That STEP program, the slide says 14 to 22, and it's actually age 16. So I apologize for that. They can apply for that program when they're 16 because we do actually hire them as a Bosma Enterprises temporary employee. So please make that change, scratch me out on that one. But those two programs happen when students are a little bit younger. And then as they get closer to leaving, getting in with vocational rehabilitation or VR would be the next good step for them to do. And Voc Rehab or VR, those are the short terms that I'm going to use, is a really critical program for students who have disabilities. This program is, again, federally funded, and the goal of this is to help folks with disabilities obtain and maintain employment. And that means all kinds of different things for different people. They do a really good job of making sure that people set their own goals. So what do you want to be? What do you want to do? And then providing services and supports to help that person reach that goal. So the process for Voc Rehab, and I know that Voc Rehab is sort of this like nebulous beast sometimes, and everyone's like, well, what do we do? And how does it happen? And well, my office said this, well, my office said that. So I'm happy to walk through specific things with people, but in general, Voc Rehab is available to folks with disabilities, and Indiana is currently under something called Order of Selection. And what that means is that you have to qualify for VR. It's not something that you can just walk in and say, hey, I have a disability and you should serve me. They have to meet 3 of the 7 areas, 3 of the 7 barriers to employment. And I won't go through what all those are, but suffice it to say, in general, this is very general, folks who are blind, especially students who are blind or visually impaired, especially if they have another disability, are very likely to get in. I can't make any guarantees, and again, every office is different, but in very general terms, order of selection is not something that I've found to really be a hindrance to blind and visually impaired students. So what happens with Voc Rehab is that students get a referral. You can give them a referral. Anybody can give them a referral. They can call into their local office or their parents. If they're under 18, they'll definitely need their parents to help with that. You can help with that. Your Pre-ETS coach can help with that as well. They call in, they get an intake appointment, and they talk to somebody about their disabilities and what they want to do and all those things. And then they determine whether they're eligible, whether they meet those 3 out of 7 barriers to employment. If they do, then they're considered most severely disabled, or MSD, and that just means they met 3 of those 7. Doesn't matter which 3. And then they get paired with a vocational rehabilitation counselor, or VRC, and that person is really the person that's guiding them through their process. And that process starts when they get into VR, and that process ends a specific amount of time after they're employed. And I can't say it every, it's 90 days after you're employed or 6 months after you're employed, because it's different for every person. But what Voc Rehab can do for a lot of students is provide financial support for some things that are really necessary for them to be successful. So again, every case is different, but some common things that Voc Rehab does for students who are blind and visually impaired are low vision evaluations. They can help with glasses. They can help with bioptic driving. And I say can, I don't say they will or always, because again, everything is individualized, but they can help with those things. They can do assistive technology evaluations. And this is something that I really want to highlight because our blind and visually impaired students, whether they do or don't have additional disabilities, pretty much all of them use some sort of technology. I know that I am, as a blind person, very attached to my technology, and it's very expensive technology. So if your student or the individual needs technology in order to be successful in their job, in their career, then Voc Rehab can have a company come in and have a professional evaluator do that evaluation, and they can purchase that technology and the training for that technology, which is great. So I want to highlight the AT thing, and then also support for post-secondary education. I know sometimes people think like, oh, VR will just pay for everything for college, and that can be true depending on your situation, but that's not always true. It's dependent on lots of different kinds of factors, the student's family and their FAFSA and those sorts of things. But Voc Rehab can support their post-secondary education by giving them technology. Sometimes it's helping support with their book fees. Sometimes it's helping with transportation or bus passes, depending on the situation. But they really can be a great resource. And once you have gotten through all the training that you need, whether that's college or the Salesforce preparation class or whatever it is you're going to do, and you're ready to find that job, Voc Rehab can pair you with an employment specialist or a job coach. The terms are synonymous depending on the area that you live in. This is a service that Bosma does. I think we do a great job. This is the team that I work on. But some of my colleagues work with adults, and what they do is help that adult. And it can be a very young adult. They have some of the students that I've worked with have gone through our adult employment services program and are employed. And they help them find that actual job. They can help with resumes, cover letters, applications. They can help them really kind of hone in on what it is that they want to do. If they've left high school and they just weren't quite finished with that career exploration piece, they can work through a process called discovery with an adult employment specialist, and they can get that taken care of and done. And once the person gets a job, goes through the interview and is hired, the employment specialist can come onto the job with that person if the client wants that. If that's something that's helpful to them, they can come and help and make sure that the accommodations are set, that the client has some basic orientation and mobility training on the job. They can make sure that the client understands the job tasks. They can interface with the supervisor if that's helpful. A whole bunch of different things they can do once they get on the job. And then they support the client for a time while they're on that job to make sure that everything's going well and they have everything that they need. And then after, sort of the client and the employment specialist and the Voc Rehab person agree that everybody's stable on their job, this client is stable on their job, then at that point, their Voc Rehab case closes. And reaching Voc Rehab closure is a good thing. It's a positive thing. That's the goal. And I know that, sometimes students and adults are like, oh, don't close my case. I'm scared to not have these services anymore because they're outside of school. They don't have their teacher. And these are the folks that they've been working with. And really, they don't close your case unless you're stable. They are not just gone to you after you get a job. We have clients that have had a job and have been really successful in that job, and for one reason or another, don't have that job anymore and have come back through the process with Voc Rehab. So I really just want to highlight that. And that's something to tell your students and your clients, that closing your Voc Rehab case is a positive thing. It doesn't mean like nobody's ever going to serve you or help you ever again in your life. So that's Voc Rehab. I could talk about Voc Rehab for many, many more hours, but I won't. These are just some of the common things to help you get a taste of what these services are, and hopefully to highlight for you how important connecting your students or your clients, if you happen to have somebody who wants to go to work who is not connected with Voc Rehab. Okay. So we've gone through Pre-ETS, STEP, Voc Rehab, and here's some other sort of adult services. I put this in there because it's helpful to know that there's other things out there, and these sort of help with the individualization for each, particular student. The Medicaid waiver through BDDS, this is for students who have multiple disabilities, developmental disabilities. There's a whole bunch of criteria, but the waiver is a really great tool for them to be able to get support going to work, and then also just other support with life in general. Consumer advocacy organizations, I think it's really critical to connect students or any blind or visually impaired person with these organizations. And this is the NFB, the ACB, the AFB. Those are more acronyms, right? But these are organizations of blind people working towards things that blind people need and want. And each organization has sort of its own unique philosophy, and it's important for students to be able to explore those things and figure out sort of where is their people, where are their community, because they're not always going to have you as a teacher. They're not always going to have direct support from other people. The goal is to get them living out in the great big world without so much support. And these are organizations that they can really contribute to and be a part of, and get their questions answered, and really feel that they have support and resources from folks that truly understand what's going on with them. Centers for Independent Living are similar in that they offer services, and they do a great job of hiring folks with disabilities to provide information and resources and peer support, different things like that. Accessibility is the one that serves Indianapolis and the surrounding areas, and they do a wonderful job helping. Sometimes if there's a hole in student services, or like, hey, they really need this, but I'm not sure how to get that to them, a Center for Independent Living might be a good answer. Blindness specific adaptive aid stores. Blind people use canes. They use lots of cool different things, but those things don't last forever. And so eventually they're going to need to know where to buy more or to get more. These are just a short list of places where they can go. You can go online and Google those. It's really easy. Learning about public transportation and paratransit in their area. This is a thing that if your students are receiving O&M services, and I hope that they are, the O&M person would work on that, but that's something that they're going to need to know about and stay abreast of even after they graduate and they get older. And if all else fails, or before all else fails, Bosma Enterprises is obviously a great resource. If you have questions, or your students, or as they become adults, have questions and they're not sure how to do X, Y, or Z, call Bosma. We certainly will find somebody that has the answer. If someone on our team doesn't have the answer, I would be shocked, but if they don't, they will find it. And we get questions all the time from, hey, I just lost my vision, to, hey, I need to get bus passes and such is closed, or what do you guys think about this Braille display versus that Braille display? Again, I could talk about Bosma for hours and hours, but I won't. I'll just suffice it to say that if you have questions or you need resources, we are more than happy to engage with you on that. All right, so drawing near the end here, I've laid out a lot of sort of tangible transition resources and things that can help your students, program services to sign up for, paperwork to do. And that is tremendously important. Those are really helpful. They're necessary. But the last piece of it, and I think the most important piece of it, and I can say this from my own life, is your attitude as a teacher, as a provider. If there's any parents out there, whoever it is interacting with this student or this person, having a positive attitude and having high expectations for them is critical, because you can put them through all kinds of different programs. You can put them through STEP and get them into VR. But if they don't have a positive person, and I don't mean positive like, woohoo, you can do it all the time. I mean a person who's knowledgeable and who says, you know what, blind people should contribute to society and can contribute to society and are expected to contribute to society in whatever way makes sense for them. They're going to struggle. They're not going to be as effective as they otherwise could be. And a lot of times this comes from having a great blind network of friends and people. But when you're a sighted person, sometimes you carry a little bit more weight. If they've got a sighted person that says, you can do this and you're going to be successful and we're going to find a way to make this work, sometimes that even is a little bit more impactful than a blind person saying all those things. Because if you can believe in them as a sighted person who doesn't have their experience, you're going to inject them with an incredibly important piece for them to be successful in life. So that that's what I want to leave you with in terms of all the things that you can do for your students. And if you have a hard time, like, how do I do that? I don't know how to like be authentically positive with them. I would encourage you to like find some adult blind people to hang out with. Understand what your students' lives are going to be like when they grow up and they get bigger. Find competent people. Find blind people who are newly blind or have been blind for a long time. Find blind people who have gone through rehabilitation training and those who haven't, so that you can get the broad spectrum and you can really speak to your students in a way that is impactful and meaningful for them. So here we go. We're going to end this with hopefully a little bit more success for you guys. So you are going to pick now 4 numbers, right? You have Pre-ETS, you have Voc Rehab, you have STEP, you have other services for your students. So you're going to pick 4 numbers, kind of try to remember where those are. This is the same 4x4 grid with the numbers. They're in different places so that you all don't try to pick the airplane. All right. And here we go. We have some of the same prizes and answers, and then we have some that are different. We have the axe and the flashlight. We have the rope. We still have the plane. We still have the flying money and the car. We have some hiking boots. I replaced the jar of pickles with a buffet because, you know, sometimes students, they started with a jar of pickles and now they have a buffet. And a buffet is not necessarily going to get them over this mountain. It's not going to help them, but it's better than where we started, right? 2 of the pictures on here are a tunnel looking thing. The pictures aren't, the quality's not super great, but you may have gotten a tunnel. There is still a piece on here that is plain white, because sometimes the reality is you can do all of these things. I have one student that I think of that really I think of a lot, that had access to so many services and so many programs, and an amazing teacher and STEP and Voc Rehab and all of these things. And this student thus far has chosen to squander that, and it breaks my heart in a million little pieces. And so that's why I sort of put that plain white thing there, because it's not 100% successful all the time. I don't want you to leave here being like, if I do this, everything's going to be peachy, because it won't, right? But now that you have 4 of these tools, 4 of these pictures, you are much, much, much more likely to be able to get over that mountain, whether it's using the plane, that's the easy way, using this tunnel, or climbing, using the rope and the flashlight and the axe and the parka and whatever it is, and getting yourself over that mountain one way or the other. So to wrap us up here, that mountain that I showed you at the beginning, that was Maynard Mountain. And this is the Whittier Tunnel, the Anton Anderson Memorial Tunnel. And this was the solution that they came up with to get over that mountain, to get the things to the port and that they needed to get to. This is the longest dual purpose tunnel in America. It services rail cars and also like automobile traffic, and they go through, they take turns going through, and there's a super complicated computer system, and it costs $13 to get through. So it's not like you can apparate or just magically poof yourself to where you want to go. But they built this tunnel, and it makes it exponentially easier to get across that mountain. So I would encourage you and your students to get the tools and the techniques and the strategies that you need in order to find yourself a way to get through the tunnel and not have to climb the mountain in a much more difficult way. So now, please do ask me questions. We left a few minutes for that. If there are lots of questions in the chat, I'm happy to stay on for a few more minutes and answer those, or I'm happy to email you. My contact information is here. I'd love to hear from all of you if you have questions about services or students or anything in particular. Please do feel free to contact me.
Thank you, Mike. I think that was really helpful. If anybody has a pressing question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. And Mike, I know that there were a few people that had put in the chat that they were just kind of wondering, they have students in close to Bosma, and how they might, what's the process for getting one of their students into the STEP program?
So that's a great question. We will be sending out information about the STEP program later on in the late winter, probably February or March. We are watching numbers and trying to make appropriate decisions for what that STEP program will look like. But when that happens, we send it to the BLV lists. We send it to any and all kinds of lists that have to do with blindness at all in the state. If you are, whoever you are, chat friend, if you're concerned that you're not on one of those lists, please feel free to shoot me your email address at mine, and I'll make sure that you individually get a copy of the brochure and the information.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So this concludes Micah's presentation. The evaluation link can be found in SCED, or I have provided the link in the chat. The ending code is info, but